A few months ago, I released a video where I responded to Hayato Sensei Dark's video about Tears of the Kingdom. Then, he responded to my response. I got a lot of people complaining about the tone of that response. Some people called it mean or petty, and I apologize. I wasn't trying to be mean in that video, so to make up for it, I'll be extra mean in this video on purpose. If you're wondering why it took me so long to make this video, well, it's frankly because Mr. Sensei Dark's response to my response didn't meaningfully challenge my points in any way, so I didn't feel like it warranted my immediate attention in video form. But since people have been asking for it, here is my response to Hayato's response to my response to his video essay about Tears of the Kingdom.
There was a problem with this sequel specifically. They were reusing the same Hyrule from Breath of the Wild.
No, that's not the problem. The problem is the lack of continuity and the fact that Tears of the Kingdom did next to nothing to remedy the biggest issues with Breath of the Wild.
Okay, here's our first actual stumbling block.
You're not gonna let me finish that sentence, huh? Let's hear the rest of it.
Reusing Hyrule isn't inherently a bad thing, and they could have done it successfully, they just didn't.
I'm not saying that the one and only problem with the game is the reused map. I'm saying that leading up to the game's release, that was the main thing people were concerned about. That concern eventually grew into the feelings that a lot of people have today, where the entire game is just recycled Breath of the Wild.
My point was that the reused map was not a problem, let alone a deal breaker for everyone. At least, not initially. Prior to Tears of the Kingdom's release, the idea that reusing Hyrule meant that the game was somehow doomed to just be DLC was not the popular consensus. In the year plus Tears of the Kingdom's been out, how many times have you heard people say the $70 DLC people were right? We didn't expect that to happen. It's basically a coincidence that those people ended up vindicated, because their position was seen at the time as cynical and pessimistic. Most people understood that there were plenty of ways to expand on Breath of the Wild's Hyrule and weren't actually worried about the map reuse.
People don't realize that this game is charting new territory.
If people don't realize that the sequel is charting new territory, it means it's a bad sequel.
Tears of the Kingdom is unique among video game sequels in its attempts to build directly on top of its predecessor.
Except it's not. The Yakuza series reuses locations all the time. Digimon Hacker's Memory was set in the same location as Digimon Cyber Sleuth. And I haven't even played those games. I found that out from like 2 minutes of research. You could have done that too. Hell, Pokemon Gold and Silver reused Kanto in its post-game all the way back in 1999. Even within the Zelda series, we've seen iterations on the same map executed with great success. A Link to the Past's map appeared again in The Link Between Worlds, and eventually in Echoes of Wisdom. This isn't actually a new phenomenon, and Tears of the Kingdom wasn't even especially successful in its reuse of Breath of the Wild's map.
It does make me wonder, how much do they need to change in the overworld to satisfy everyone? Would 2 or 3 more settlements have done it, or did they need to completely re-overhaul everything?
I don't think anyone is saying they needed to completely redo everything, but aside from Lookout Landing, there are 0 new settlements. This isn't just an instance of gamers being impossible to please, they barely even tried to make it feel different.
Proper narrative sequel? What? Where?
Should I have said thematic sequel? I think you're absolutely right here. Narrative is not the right word for me to be using. I sort of threw that word in there while I was recording because it felt right at the time.
I love that you choose your words based on vibes rather than what they actually mean. It kind of explains a lot.
Like, the main plot points of Breath of the Wild definitely don't carry over in any meaningful way to Tears of the Kingdom. But I do think the story of the player's version of Link, and also the story of the people of Hyrule, does carry over in a meaningful way. I don't think the word thematic conveys that properly, and I think the word narrative is too broad, so I'm not sure what adjective I should have used here. What I was trying to call attention to is the fact that in this game, we follow up on the entirety of Hyrule.
I think you're essentially describing a sort of meta-sequel, where it's not necessarily the characters or locations that have changed, but rather your relationship to them as you're returning to these games 6 years later in real life. Which is honestly fair. The issue is that this isn't universal either. There are people who played Tears of the Kingdom first, or who will play the 2 games back to back. And those people won't feel those 6 years go by the same way you or I did. For them, it'll just be a jarring lateral move to a world that's mostly the same, except no one remembers you.
When it comes to navigating Hyrule, they do hand you some glowing dots and tell you where to go. But a lot of the game's intrigue comes down to how various points of interest have changed. The game never steers you to the Great Plateau, but that's where you get multi-hand and kick off the Koga quest.
First of all, it's auto-build. If I tried to get away with calling it multi-hand, I'd never hear the end of it, and the worst people on Earth would be pissing and moaning that they should have gatekept video games harder. Ah, to be a man on the internet. Anyway, this isn't a good thing. First-time players aren't drawn to the plateau, and I know for a fact that a good number of people never found auto-build as a result. There are people in my YouTube comments who found out from my video that auto-build exists. Hell, a lot of people never even went to Lookout Landing and spent a good chunk of the game without the paraglider. I'm not saying games should hold your hand hand and walk you everywhere you need to go, but there has to be a middle ground, and Tears of the Kingdom did not find it.
What happened to my house?
Zelda moved in, and all of your stuff is gone. This is never explained.
Come on, the explanation writes itself. Zelda returns, but her home, the castle, is in ruins. Suggests he wants to move in with, right?
Sells all of Link's stuff on
He
eBay.
wants to
And then
move
Link
in with
just
her,
feels
but she
too
doesn't
shy.
quite
He moves out to
explain
look
it.
outlandish.
Or, something like that.
You are writing fanfiction in real time.
Everything is different. I'd really love to play the game you're talking about, but that's not Tears of the Kingdom.
Have you heard of hyperbole?
Don't fucking condescend to me.
Not literally everything has changed, but there are changes in every location. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Let's go back to the Shrine of Resurrection example. There's no shrine, but instead there are vines on the ceiling. There's a hole in the ground where you get to find some bananas and fight a Yiga.
This is a very different claim than the original one you made. You said there's been
A major shift in the status quo at every location.
I don't think adding some vines and a singular banana counts as that.
Pirates? What pirates? These? I'm pretty sure these are bokoblins.
Okay, that's not fair and you know it. You can be more than just one thing. Imagine if someone pointed at you and said, "Wow, that's a YouTuber," and someone else is like, "That's not a YouTuber? That's a Skitty plush."
At least I occasionally get a cute shirt and hard hat to indicate that I'm editing the video. These guys don't get pirate hats or bandanas or literally anything.
Besides, I don't think you're being fair to the work that these pirates have put in. You want to tell Stinky Larry that he's not a real pirate?
Yes.
Do you want to tell Peg Leg Earl that he does not belong on this crew?
Peg leg? What peg leg? You're just making shit up again.
Are you gonna walk up to Captain Boko Beard himself and tell him that you think his pirates are not valid pirates?
In the same series that has Tetra and her crew in it, yeah, these guys are not real pirates. I'm standing by it.
Keep hating. They are thriving.
No, they're not. I killed them all, and now they're gone forever. Some pirates.
Rito Village is dealing with a blizzard, and then you beat Colgera, and the village goes back to how it was in Breath of the Wild.
Let's talk about Rito Village for a second.
No. Back the fuck up. Roll the original clip.
Rito Village is dealing with climate change.
You're just gonna gloss over the fact that you claimed Rito Village was dealing with climate change? That's what I was responding to with that line, and you just edited it out like I wouldn't notice.
This game emphasizes the younger generation of Rito, who stepped up to hold down the fort while the adults were away. The hard times have given these kids a chance to mature.
Except for Molly, who hasn't aged a day for some reason.
There are relevant changes in each area. We see a change in the Zora monarchy,
Sidon doesn't even sit on the throne.
and a renewed sense of optimism among the citizens, which is a big deal considering how the Zora are stubborn and slow-changing people.
We got that same exact arc in Breath of the Wild, 6 years prior.
Link is allowed to freely roam Gerudo Town without any kind of disguise, which completely recontextualizes how you're able to interact with it.
But that's not a change in the status quo, that's just Link being granted special privileges because he's Link. It's not like men are suddenly allowed in Gerudo Town. In fact, you can find this guy in prison because he tried to visit his wife and daughter, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's a plot thread that doesn't go anywhere. I didn't even talk about this in my original video. There's just a guy in prison who you can't help. This isn't even the only instance of a quest like this that doesn't go anywhere. People seriously try to tell me that this game was finished. Look at this shit!
All of this culminates in the Hateno quest, where the conflict is between the old and the new. One side wants to put things back to the way they were, the other side wants to embrace the flashy and the new. The end result is a compromise, a willingness to embrace a new normal.
I actually agree that the Hateno Village quest is the culmination of Tears of the Kingdom storytelling philosophy. A potentially interesting conflict emerges, is resolved immediately, and nothing fundamentally changes.
But the mayor takes things a step further, taking inspiration from the mushroom aesthetic and developing the sun pumpkin. Maybe this doesn't revolutionize the gameplay, but narratively and thematically, I think it emphasizes serious growth.
The Sun Pumpkins look unique, but at the end of the day, they're just a worse version of the Sundelions. Just another ingredient to scroll past in the material hotbar.
But there's no shrine on Shrine Island.
I hate to be that guy, but this is a Japanese game. It's not pronounced Shrine Island. It's pronounced Shurine. It's a different word entirely. You've been to Japan. You should know these things.
11歳の頃から日本語を勉強し続けたよ。シュリネなんかじゃないよ。日本語の名前は祠島。つまり、祠がある島。プレワイでダタクスの祠があるから祠島と呼ぶ。名は祠島なのに祠はないんだもん。しかもこのゲームは7700円。
Also, I love that you keep showing clips from this one same Fallen Sky Island since it's basically the only remotely sizable one in the entire game.
Listen, B-roll is hard.
Yeah, I know. I got over 100 hours of it for my video. I'm even getting B-roll for this video.
I recorded a bunch of it for that video before I finished writing the script because I wanted to lend a copy of the game to my poor little brother who hadn't gotten a chance to play it yet, see?
You know, you could have gotten him his own copy if the game didn't cost $70.
Are you saying the game has too much optional content?
Yes, obviously. Why are you saying that like it's crazy? There are 81 Addison signs, 25 crystal escort missions, over 140 caves. This game is bloated beyond belief and full of worthless busywork.
Generally, quests have increased in complexity.
Have they?
Here are some examples of quests that I really liked. Some traveling chefs fall unconscious in the woods after eating monster meat. A prophetic chicken puts Link through various challenges. A bunch of men strip down to their boxers to fight monsters.
This is the same smoke and mirrors bullshit that Tears of the Kingdom pulls all the time. All the quests you just talked about are presented as these interesting mysteries, but all of them end up being anticlimactic filler. The sick travelers in the woods, they just messed up the recipe for a rice bowl. The talking chicken, it's a Yiga clan member in disguise. The naked survey team guys, they just misheard explore all other paths as explore in underpants. And these are the shining examples you picked to prove me wrong?
Tarrytown was very memorable to me because it had that emotional edge to it. Spending time with that young girl, helping her sneak down to see her dad, and then finally seeing her off with the hot air balloon scene, it was a highlight of the game for me.
You just described the entire quest in 10 seconds. So much for complexity.
Breath of the Wild had some good quests too, but I felt like the scenarios for Tears of the Kingdom were just more interesting and diverse. Or maybe my memory just sucks.
Yes, your memory does suck. Tears of the Kingdom's quests are on the same level as Breath of the Wild's at best, and at worst, they're even weaker. It was underwhelming to give this guy 10 crickets in exchange for 100 rupees back in Breath of the Wild, but it was insulting to have to give the exact same guy 10 frogs in Tears of the Kingdom in exchange for 10 rushrooms. How is this more interesting when it's exactly the same?
If the point you're trying to make is about resource management, maybe don't show your giant inventory full of cooked meals that can help you easily negate any gloom damage.
And do you know how useless most of these meals are? I had like 5 that would heal my gloom, 1 that would give me the extra golden heart if I ate it, and then a bunch of absolutely useless garbage that the game just gives you for free for completing small quests.
So you're just gonna gloss over the 5 meals you had in your inventory that would restore gloom damage? Are we supposed to think that that's not a lot? Most Zelda games only give you 4 bottles to store healing items in, and none of them have a max heart count of 40. My point stands.
Yes, it looks like I have a lot, but it's mostly useless.
You could say the same thing about Tears of the Kingdom in general.
Also, you can extremely easily travel to the surface or to any of the 120 light routes, and then it doesn't pose any real risk to you whatsoever.
And break the flow of exploration? Don't tell me. You're the person who runs back to the Pokemon Center after every single trainer battle.
Maybe.
The Raiders of Hyrule quests feature entire squadrons going to battle against the monster forces.
You know, the same monsters you've been fighting for the entire game. You don't need the monster squads to take care of these guys. These missions make it clear that when the Blood Moon comes, these monsters are all going to respawn. You're not actually making a difference. You're not helping Hyrule
Heal?
It's not about me, it's about them. Compared to the Hylians in Breath of the Wild, who mostly stayed in safe areas, these guys are actively putting their lives on the line. Whether it actually affects the big picture doesn't matter all that much in the end.
No, it definitely matters. It's not like these are characters we care about. It's not like they're actually risking anything. They only ever get knocked out. On the micro level, I don't care, and on the macro level, I also don't care.
And nothing ever comes of it. You know just as much about the upheaval by the end of the game as you did at the beginning.
Not strictly true. The Hylians have already discovered some very useful information for you, like how the Gloom and the Sundelions work.
You know what else tells you how Gloom and Sundelions work? The item description for the Sundelions.
The folks near Tarrytown are actually putting the Zonai devices to use.
And nothing ever comes of it.
Meanwhile, Toro helps you with the quest that culminates in discovering the 5th Sage.
Oh, you can find the 5th Sage without his help. And this still doesn't tell us anything new about the upheaval or the Zonai.
Maybe the characters feel shallow to you because there's not a lot of interpersonal conflict. This game is very good guys versus bad guys. And while a bit of variety could have been nice, the series doesn't seem very interested in that kind of interpersonal conflict.
Sure, if you ignore Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, and Breath of the Wild, you can argue that the Zelda series doesn't really do interpersonal conflict. I hate this argument more than words can possibly express. Story and characters have always been an important part of the Zelda series, and arguing otherwise just makes you look like you don't know what you're talking about.
They've been inspired to take their lives into their own hands.
Do you have an example of this? Like, even one?
Yeah, the squads from earlier. Remember them? The research teams?
Oh right, I did forget about them, because they don't matter and I don't care.
Because when I think of mobility, I think of an extremely slow lumbering rock monster.
Of course, that's why they gave us the Minoru construct.
Dunking on Minoru unprompted, are we? You're basically doing my job for me.
Both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have low skill ceilings. If the argument you're making is that it feels good to play Tears of the Kingdom because you want that sense of progression back, just replay Breath of the Wild.
I don't want to redo the progression. I think Tears of the Kingdom continues the player's progression between games. If you started this game out as a Breath of the Wild pro, the new tools only pave the way for more progression. You can't keep getting better if you've already hit the top of Breath of the Wild.
And what about when you hit the top of Tears of the Kingdom? You'll inevitably come crawling back to Breath of the Wild when you crave that Switch Zelda experience 5, 10, 20 years from now, since, in addition to being infinitely more replayable, it has Trial of the Sword and Master Mode.
What were we talking about again? Towers, right. You're saying they're bad, and I assume the reason you say they're bad is because they trivialize traversal. Like, the most optimal way to get from point A to an undiscovered point B is to launch yourself into the sky and paraglide. I get that. I don't think it's as big of a problem as you're making it out to be. The towers, alongside everything else in this game, are all about giving the player more control, making you feel like you are the master of Hyrule. You can use them to skip over literally everything if you want to, but like, if you choose to skip over everything in the game that might otherwise appeal to you, that's kind of on you, isn't it?
No, it's not on me. I didn't go out of my way to make the game less fun. The fact is that gliding or the air bike will always be faster and give you more sweeping views than walking will. If I wanted to explore this Hyrule by walking, climbing, and gliding, I'd just play Breath of the Wild again. This game is like paying $70 for a copy of Minecraft where you're locked into creative mode. You can intentionally play less efficiently to simulate that survival experience, but it's ultimately an illusion you're forced to create yourself in lieu of having an actual experience that was designed for you.
And now that they've given you an arsenal of options, you're supposed to use them.
You're not giving a single example of a time that the game asks you concretely to use the building mechanics, and that's because outside of the tutorial, it almost never happens. This building system's complex and it's well executed, but it's wasted on this game because they never ask you to use it for anything.
What are you talking about? Ultra Hand is all over the place in this game. It's the focus of several shrines, escort missions, minigames, the entire construct factory.
I said almost never. Have you heard of hyperbole? Anyway, most of the shrines don't actually have you building stuff. Most of them are either empty or tutorials, and the ones that do have you building stuff are usually extremely simple.
This game lets you reminisce the same way you reminisce when you're revisiting your childhood hometown. You see your favorite playground, but it looks different because you're bigger. You talk to an old friend, but it feels different because you're both older.
I didn't mention this in my original response, but this stock footage is so fucking funny to me. Why is this lady eating unseasoned spaghetti out of a Chinese takeout box? This isn't really related, but I did feel the need to mention it.
You drive past your old house, but it's different because someone else lives there now. The nostalgia we feel in Tears of the Kingdom is perhaps the most natural nostalgia we can feel.
I understand what you're saying here, but the same can be true the other way around. Tears of the Kingdom can feel like going back to your childhood favorite restaurant, but the food isn't as good anymore. And you can't tell if it's because the food got worse or if it's just because you're older, because you have a more refined palate, you've tried more foods. And maybe the mac and cheese that was super delicious when you were 10 just doesn't hit the same anymore.
This is my favorite part of your video. The way you extend this analogy really helps me understand your perspective in a way that I don't think anything else ever could. So, 1 point for you.
Oh, fuck off.
I feel like a lot of Tears of the Kingdom discourse lately has been very negative, and I wanted to take the conversation in a more positive direction.
You literally searched for Tears of the Kingdom bad. If you want positive results about the game, perhaps try not doing that next time.
To be honest, their video was more about Tears of the Kingdom than it ever was about me.
No, it was personal. I lied in my original video. This is a personal attack against you, Hayato Sensei Dark, and this is just the beginning. I will not stop until I have destroyed you. Peace was never an option. Or something like that. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to finish this video.
In that case, allow me to be the one to bring an end to this charade. You know, I had a 40-page response video drafted, defending and restating all of my points again, but it felt redundant. Also, that sounds like way too much editing, so I figured, hey, why not hijack your video instead? We can nitpick each other's half-jokes and hyperbole until the moon falls, but maybe we should try to break this Zelda cycle that we've gotten ourselves into. I'm endlessly grateful for your initial response video, as it gave me a chance to reconsider my positions and better support my original argument. I was trying to make that one as concise as possible, but I do think a little more nuance could have gone a long way. Based on all this discourse, you might assume that Tears of the Kingdom is like my favorite game of all time. But it's not. Like, not even close. I never call this game perfect, and I never say the haters are wrong for disliking it. Skitty and I, we've talked about this off stream, but we agree in more places than we don't. The main plot, for example, is not interesting. The tears, the memories are so poorly handled, and most importantly, there's no... Our videos take different perspectives, but that's because I was aiming for a straightforward thematic analysis, while Skitty was trying to eviscerate this game's flaws at a molecular level. But even though some elements of this game are horribly undercooked, I do still stand by its strengths. This is a meta-narrative sequel that is meant to give the player a certain kind of experience, a mix of nostalgia and growth, and I hope my video continues to resonate with people. Do you like listening to me admit that Tears of the Kingdom is bad in some ways? Well, I have a couple videos on the way that are a bit more critical of the game, so maybe consider checking those out. Or if you like Tears of the Kingdom, don't worry. I can play both sides. Speaking of playing both sides, hey, you're on Skitty's channel right now, maybe hit the subscribe button. And then, to play my side, go to my channel and maybe subscribe to me too, you know, if you want to.
Well, you heard the man. Go to Hayato's channel and show his videos some love. He's been a really good sport in all of this, and an even better friend. As I was working on this video, my main video about Tears of the Kingdom passed a major milestone. It hit 1 million views. That is a 1 with 6 zeros. I already made a way too long community post about it, but I wanted to just say thank you again to everyone who's watched, enjoyed, commented on, and shared that video. I never could have imagined a year ago that it would take off like this, and it's made me so happy to watch it grow over the past 7 months or so. Thank you all so much. Also, I wanted to officially announce that the Skitty Bitty store is now open on Redbubble. Get your very own I can't do a serious ad read. Get your very own No Shrine on Shrine Island t-shirt today. Or if you prefer a sticker, how about this one of everyone's favorite angry plushie, drawn by yours truly? Okay, plugged the merch. Let's wrap this up. I'm hard at work on the Breath of the Wild retrospective, but just to let you all know, it's the last semester of my senior year and I really want to finish strong. But I trust you all to be the great audience you've always been and be patient with me while I work on it. And in the meantime, I'll do my best to put out little fun videos like this one, or the Smoke Spots one. This video is brought to you by my patrons. Thank you so much to all my plushies whose names are on screen right now. Your generous support allows me to keep doing what I do. Thank you to my big skits, Birthday Boy, Lily, Evagorn, Jen, and Jane. Thank you so much to my holy skits. Thank you Avery, thank you Bunny, thank you Cyan Blue, thank you Fossil Daddy, thank you Orion, thank you Redman, thank you Rob, thank you Sarah, and thank you Rosalina. Finally, a very special shout out to Reach and Wyvern, who've made the questionably responsible but much appreciated decision this month to pledge 70 United States dollars. Thank you so much for your generosity, and please do not feel obligated to do this literally ever again. Thanks again to everyone for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe to Hayato as well. I never expected this random internet rivalry to become an actual proper friendship, but I feel very lucky to have picked such a cool guy to dunk on. Maybe one day we'll actually do that Warrior Cats book club. We'll see. That's all from me for today. See you next time.